Hey yo, Woodman here. I wanted to talk to you about the M mark on hands. I have the M mark on both of my hands, and um, even the lines themselves of the upper part of the M connect with one another to form like a half moon. This is supposed to be kind of rare. Apparently, 1.5% of people in the world have this M on just one hand. Having it on two may well shift that percentage even lower. YouTube constantly likes to send me videos about this. How the algorithm figured out that I had an M on my hand, and yet I never put my hand in front of a camera for YouTube to look at, I don't know. But this is a matrix-like world we live in, and there are no such thing as coincidences. Everything has a time, place, and a purpose. So let's go ahead and talk about the M's. The idea that an M mark on both palms indicates being a supposed chosen one, right? Because that's what a lot of these videos talk about, appears in a lot of cultural and mystical contexts, although it is not universally recognized across all cultures. We can try to take a look at some origins, meanings, and associated missions and abilities and end goals linked to the idea of what it means to have the M on both hands. Let's start with the cultural sources. The primary place this comes from is palmistry, also known as chiromancy. So in palmistry, the practice of interpreting lines on the palms, the M shape, is formed by major lines, which is known as a heart line, a head line, and a lifeline, and is sometimes considered to be significant. While traditional palmistry doesn't necessarily link this mark to being a chosen one, it does suggest a strong intuition, leadership skills, and a potential for success. In terms of folklore and mysticism, some modern interpretations and mystical traditions have adopted the idea that the M on the palm indicates a special destiny. This concept has been popularized, particularly in New Age, spiritual, modern day mysticist circles, right? And so, what's the meaning of the M mark? Well, some believe it's linked to intuition and insight. People with an M mark on their palms are believed to possess heightened intuition and insight. They are thought to be able to read people and situations well. Also, there's a link potentially between the M mark and leadership and success. This mark is associated with natural leadership qualities and the potential for great success in life. What about destiny and purpose? Well, the M mark is sometimes seen as a sign that the person has a very, very unique mission or purpose to fulfill in their lifetime. So let's talk about what these potential missions of the chosen one might be, right? Oh my God, I've got the two M's on my hands. I'm the chosen one. What happens now? The missions or purposes of those considered to be chosen ones can vary widely depending on the cultural or spiritual context. First off, we have spiritual guidance. Individuals with these marks may be seen as very spiritual guides or very tapped in or potential teachers, and they will help others on their spiritual paths. It's also maybe associated with healing. Some are believed to have the ability to radiate some sort of energy to heal, either physically, emotionally, or spiritually. That you lay on hands and it feels good, right? What about leadership? They could also be destined to take on leadership roles, bringing positive change to communities or even the world around them. And they could also be destined to be warriors for good. In some myths, chosen ones are depicted as warriors who fight against evil or dark forces and who try to protect the world from the invasion of these dark forces. What about the abilities and powers of the so called chosen one? I know I seem like I'm mocking it, but I do kind of find it a little incredible. But again, no accidents in life. So some of the things that are associated with having the M's on your palms would be enhanced intuition, an ability to sense or understand things beyond ordinary perception, healing powers, the ability to heal oneself, right? Whether that be emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, or others through various means, maybe Reiki, maybe physical, emotional, or spiritual contact. Charisma and influence. Charisma. Well, that's a natural charm and an ability to influence or inspire others. And so, it's kind of like the effect that a powerful populist leader would have. What about prophetic visions? In some situations, they may even have visions or dreams that provide guidance or foretell future events. Enhanced leadership. Exceptional skills in leading and motivating people, often accompanied by a sense of responsibility and purpose. End goal. The end goal for these chosen ones typically involves fulfilling their destined roles, which could also include, but maybe not necessarily limited to, creating positive change in the environment around us, or even in the world at large or the universe. Leading or inspiring others to bring about significant positive changes is an important goal, and some who are deemed to be chosen ones take up this mantle. Spiritual enlightenment. In achieving a high level of spiritual awareness and helping others to do the same, those with the chosen one mark may very well be a beacon or a light to others. What about protecting the world? Well, they can help defend against negative forces and or events and ensure that the well-being of others around them is vastly improved, or even the world at large. What about personal fulfillment? They complete their personal journeys or missions, which can often align with a broader spiritual or societal goal. While the concept of the M mark indicates that a chosen one exists, it's not necessarily found in the oldest forms of folklore or mysticism. It's really more of a more new age or recent idea, but nonetheless, it is a fast growing and widely held, to some degree, cultural belief in some societies. And there are stories and there are myths that certain physical marks or traits can signify special destinies and abilities. The idea has kind of caught on universally that you have a destiny, you have a purpose, and you can search for meaning beyond the ordinary. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just say what I think about all this. I do think it's actually very coincidental that some of the things that are being mentioned about people with the M sign are things that I have come across in my life in other contexts. In other words, that I've received signs that my mission is to help uplift the plight of others. I received signs that I'm destined to somehow teach or lead others. I received signs that I have a psychic ability. Uh, Let me give you a perfect example. And I think I've mentioned on this channel before. Maybe you haven't heard it. Maybe you heard it in passing. But I am a lawyer, and I want to say maybe about, if I had to guess, I'll say maybe 17 years ago, I was in a trial. And this trial actually involved an individual who was in the course of committing a burglary. Now, it wasn't a very sophisticated burglary. This individual actually was not that bright at all. Um, you have this family at home, right? You have a mother, you have a father, you have a child that's in the crib. You also have a grandfather there as well. I guess the grandfather was staying with this couple. And it was nighttime and they were sleeping. This criminal individual breaks through the window. Now, how unusual is that, right? Like, could you imagine you're sleeping in your house and just someone just comes crashing right through the window? This is the case I had. This is the case I had to prosecute. And so, his attorneys were very adamant that he was not guilty. Hey, you know, defendants are entitled to their right to contest anything, no matter how it looks. So the guy comes crashing through the window, and then he's like trying to get up, but before he can even do a thing, the father or husband and the grandfather are right on it, right? Because the baby's crib is actually not that far away, and the wife is also there in the home as well. So you have these men that are springing into action, to try to defend their loved ones, you know, who they feel need the protection from this strange guy that just crashed into their house out of nowhere. So the father starts wrestling with the guy, and the guy is actually kind of in a rage. He looks delirious. It's really hard to tell what the hell is going on with him. And this actually was a factor with the jury as well, because after a while they started to think he was mental. They started to think he, you know, maybe he had some issues. Maybe it was a dual diagnosis, some mental illness coupled with some substance abuse. Either way, the father is struggling with him. Um, you know, because this guy's got some strength to him. And so the grandfather gets the grand idea of, well, just knock him down, and then I have an idea. And so the father knocks him down. You know, they're resting on the ground. So now the grandfather grabs a chair, right? You know, a chair with four legs, and slams it right on top of the guy and sits in it. Now, how unusual is that? So the grandfather's sitting in this chair, and now the father can now use all his strength to basically hold down the guy's arms and legs. So it's weird. It's hard to imagine how that takes place, but it actually took place. So you got the grandfather with the chair pinning this guy down. You've got the father who's now using extra strength to hold him down, but because of the fact that the chair is creating a major impediment for the guy, that helps to keep him in one place, and so the father can now successfully use all of his strength to make sure he can't go anywhere. And so, and then the wife, of course, calls the police. The police arrive. This guy is taken into custody and sits in jail until his trial, which, of course, I'm the lead prosecutor. So now, during the trial, as I hear the testimony progressing, you know, I'm just thinking in my mind, okay, what is a burglary? A burglary is essentially some form of trespass, right? In other words, if you think about common law, you know, the law that we inherited from England, you know, over centuries of their development of law. You know, a trespass is when you go somewhere you don't belong. But burglary has extra special connotations to it because, you know, yes, you can have a burglary of a commercial building or a public building, but typically when we think of burglary, we think of it as burglary of a home. And so there are a lot of things that take place with that, which is that usually there's some sort of stealthiness going on. Usually there's this risk of maybe being burglarized at nighttime. There are a lot of things that go on there, but in order to prove a burglary, you have to prove that the person entered the property, which is, like I said, a trespass. But before they entered the property, they have to have a fully formed conscious intent that when they get inside the property, they're going to commit a crime therein. And that's where the law gets tricky and difficult with burglaries, is because intent is an operation of the mind. And intent is not something that's easy to prove because we are not mind readers and we don't have mind reading devices that we can just slap on a defendant and say, what were you thinking? Right? So you have to use a lot of circumstantial evidence to do it. So here's the problem. In a lot of typical burglary cases, how you're ending up proving it is you might use something like, oh, you know, we saw this guy running out of this home where a family lives, and in his pockets was a diamond necklace as well as some earrings and this looks like some gold watch, right? So in other words, the person goes in, they take these items, they stash them in a bag, they stash them in their pockets, they stash them wherever they can just stuff them to carry them with them, and they leave. So that's an easy burglary to prove because what you now have is what they call unexplained possession of goods. You can use that to infer that the person went in to steal, right? But remember, it has to be an intent formed prior. It can't be formed after. There was a particular case where a person got into a property and then later on said, oh, that's a good looking bicycle right there. It looks expensive. And they took it. It wasn't a burglary because of the fact that the way the facts came out, it was definitely shown that they didn't think about stealing the bicycle until after they trespassed on the property. So that's why it's got to be a fully formed intent before. And so now what do I have here? I don't have him stealing anything, right? He breaks in his house before he can even do anything. He's subdued. So the problem becomes that they're either going to say it's not any kind of crime, or that they're going to say it's a trespass at best, because I can't prove the fully formed intent. But then here is where my abilities kicked in, the psychic power that I have. I just immediately imagined that the defense was going to file a motion. They were going to harp on these issues, and they were going to really, really hammer it home so that this guy could get off of the crime. So the whole night before the next day of trial, I actually wrote a 15-page response to a motion I had never seen. Because here's how it typically goes. Defense attorneys always try to keep prosecutors, on edge, catch them off guard. They don't play fair, because that's how our system is. Our system doesn't want necessarily for the defense attorney to have to play fair. They have to use every trick or wile in their little toolbox to find a way to get them some sort of technicality or something to get their guy off. So I'm thinking to myself, yes, there's a motion coming. I can see exactly how it reads in my mind. I visualized it, and I began to write my response. And I got all the case law to basically back up my theory. And I had a couple of theories. One was that there is something called the nighttime stealth presumption, which is that if you try to enter a household stealthily at night, it's presumed that you're going to commit a crime in that household. And I know this particular case is not that stealthy because he crashed through the window, but apparently there's case law that says breaking a window and getting in is actually per se um, a stealth act, even though it's not sounding very stealthy because you're hearing the crashing window. But that is presumed to be one of the acts that qualifies as nighttime stealth. The other theory I had was that a property is not just the building; it's also the land surrounding the property, which is called the curtilage at law. And so the thing was, there's a fence that's before you get into the house. And so the curtilage counts usually from the fence in terms of land going back to the actual outside perimeter of the structure. So that's all considered to be part of the property. And so my theory was this. He crossed the fence with the fully formed intent that he was going to crash through the window. And I know it sounds weird, but hear me out. The thing is that it's not enough to just say, well, okay, he committed this trespass, right? Because he's trespassing as soon as he crosses the fence, because the property includes that land that's just outside the building. So the fact that he broke the window is actually another crime. It's called criminal mischief or malicious mischief. So kind of like just how we would prove up a burglary by saying, oh, we found stuff in your pocket that you stole, that there's an inference that you broke in a house with intent to steal. Here I said, well, he went onto the property with the intent to break that window. And that's absolutely legitimate under the law, and there's case law that backs that up. Suffice to say, I won that motion, and they were not able to get his charges either dismissed or reduced. But everybody looked at me in awe because they were like, how did you do that? How did you know we were going to sandbag you and ambush you and predict what we were going to say and already write a response to something you'd never seen? And that's where the foresight and psychic intuition that I have in me came out. And I didn't know what it was back then. I just said, well, I just did a thought exercise. But it was more to it than just that, right? I've been having visions. I've been having dreams. I am psychic. And so that's why I find this whole thing about the M thing very interesting, because it's predicted that individuals with this M mark are going to be those kind of people. They're going to be the intuitive, psychic people. And so here, strangely enough, they are oddly right. So I don't know if there's anything to this M thing. Like I said, there's no such thing as mistakes or coincidences. Everything has a meaning, and I do believe that this reality that we live in is a matrix-like world. I'll let you be the judge of it. Thank you for listening. I know this is actually longer than most of my usual messages. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Take care. Have a wonderful day. I love you. Bye.